We're doing the second page of the notes, so if you have indeed made your circle notebook, this would be what is going to be going on the second page. Now, full disclosure, if you can't fit these all on one page, it's not the end of the world. You're going to have extra pages in the end of it. What we're going to be talking about today are, or this time round, is circumference, area, exact and approximate answers, as well as the rectangular coordinate formula for a circle. Please bear in mind these are just the initial notes, and we'll of course be doing examples in subsequent videos. So first thing is the circumference. The formula for the circumference is the c, circumference, equals 2 times pi times r. Please bear in mind that the circumference ends up being the same as the perimeter, or the distance around the circle. Now r stands for, nice circle, eh? R stands for the radius. So in order to actually calculate this, you're going to have to know the radius of the circle. Remember, the radius is measured from the center of the circle to the edge, and it's how the circle is defined. So for instance, if we had a radius that was, say, 2 centimeters, then we could calculate the circumference by simply taking c would equal 2 times pi times 2. Now circumference is a length, so the units are going to be linear. That is, it's just going to be straight, plain old centimeters. And that would be 4 times pi, or 4 times pi is approximately 12.56 centimeters. So that would be an example there. The next thing we're going to talk about is area. The formula for the area is pi r squared. And so once again, we'd have to know the radius. It had to be given some value. Let's say this was 3 centimeters, which would simply mean that the area, now as we know, area has square units, and if you look carefully, the radius here is indeed squared, which means that we're going to take centimeters times centimeters. So to find the area of this particular circle, we take pi times 3 squared. Remember, 3 squared is not 3 times 2, it is 3 times 3. So this could be written as 9 pi centimeters squared, or it could be written as 9 times 3.4, or right around 27 centimeters squared. Next thing we're going to talk about is exact versus approximate answer. When it asks for an exact answer, it's asking for something that actually is easier to calculate, but it means leaving things in terms of pi. What this means is if you have a circle, and we'll do a couple of calculations with a circle, let's say we know something different. Let's say we know that this is a diameter, right? We know that the center of the circle is right here, so this is a diameter. And let's say we know that the diameter is equal to, I don't know, what's a good number? 15 centimeters. 15 centimeters. Centimeters are popular. Why? Because they're used everywhere else in the world. In any event, what we're going to do now is calculate what is the exact answer for both the circumference and the area. So circumference is 2 times pi times, now this is where we have to be careful. That is the diameter. So we know that the diameter, right? Diameter over here is d, let's call it, is equal to 15 centimeters. And that means we have to find the radius, because the formula requires that. That would be 7.5. Why? Simply put, 7.5 is half of 15. And remember, the diameter is simply twice the radius. So if you look at this, 1 radius, 2 radius. So this means then we simply write 7.5, and the circumference would be equal to, now we're going to leave this in terms of pi. Pi is what they call a transcendental number. It's a number that is irrational, that does not repeat and does not ever terminate as a decimal. We do know that 2 times 7.5 is 15. Go figure, coincidence, right? And then we know that this is just going to be straight centimeters, plain centimeters, because it's the circumference, so just a length. And that actually would be the exact answer. That, and that's it. Something similar happens when you find the area. It just gets a little bit trickier. For that, we're going to need a calculator. But the area would be pi times the radius, which we now know to be 7.5, squared, which means we're looking at, now all we really need to worry about when we're finding exact answers are just any regular numbers. Everything that's a pi is just going to stay a pi. So it happens to work out that this is 56.25. That is what 7.5 squared is. And then the exact answer would be pi centimeters, but because it's an area, squared. So that would be our final answer. The exact answer leaves things in terms of pi, simply put. The approximate answer is what you've probably been doing most of the time. So for the same situation, if we wanted to find the approximate answer, we'd simply treat pi as 3.14 or 3.14159, or we use the pi button on the calculator. Any one is acceptable. So for instance, if we were talking about the same circle, the circumference would be 2 times pi times 7.5, which would mean it'd be 2 times, I'm just going to use 3.14 as pi, because pi is approximately equal to 3.14, right? And then you just run those numbers. 2 times 3.14 times 7.5, whoops, 7.5 is 47.1, and because it's circumference, just straight centimeters. That's it. The big difference, we treat pi as 3.14. In other words, we treat it as a number that gets involved in our calculation, whereas before we just kind of kept it aside like a variable, but it's not a variable, so it just comes along for the ride. So area would be pi times 7.5 squared, according to the formula, which is 3.14 times 7.5 squared, which is, in the end, a nice round 176.625, and because it's an area, centimeters squared. Please bear in mind these answers look different, but they are actually the same as the answers we got before. The only difference is instead of using pi as part of the answer, we're using pi within the answer and treating it as just another number. This is the trickiest of them all, but it's not actually that bad. So what this is the rectangular coordinate formula of a circle. Rectangular coordinates are simply the xy coordinate plane as you know them, and this is how we can graph them. So it should be relatively obvious, but I'll go ahead and put this in here just to make sure we're clear, that r is the radius, and the center of the circle, which is not obvious, is a point A, comma, B. If you remember, way back from algebra, something called point slope form, there's a way that you write the linear equation, so you have y minus y sub 0 equals m times x minus x sub 0. This is similar, where the A and the B come from, to in the rectangular coordinate formula for the circle. So let's say, as an example, we have a circle that has a radius equal to, we're going to keep this simple for ourselves, 3, and the center of this circle is the point 2, -3. No, let's go with -4. There. So what that means is, if we wanted to write the rectangular form, we'd simply have to plug these values in, knowing this radius. Now this can be worked any different way. I could give you the rectangular coordinate form and you could work these numbers back, but I'll show you what this would look like. So it would start off as x minus, then the x coordinate, which is 2, and then squared, plus y. Now this is where you have to be careful. The y coordinate is indeed negative, so that would mean when we put it in this formula, it's y minus whatever the y coordinate is, minus a negative would become positive. still squared. And yes, the parentheses are important. And then last but not least, the radius squared, which would be 3 squared or 9. So that's what that would look like. So if you had this formula, you could work backwards and figure out what the radius and the center are. Graphing. I just want to run quickly through this. You will be asked to graph these. So if you're asked to graph a circle that either has this formula or has these characteristics, then what you would do, the easiest way to do it, is to find the point 2, -4, which is right down here. Remember x then y, but we all know that. And then we know that the radius is 3, which means from this, which is the center, we're going to go 3 units. 3 units, now drawing a circle can be a bit tricky when you do it freehand, but what you do is you plot a point 3 points above the center, 3 points below, 3 points to the left, and 3 points to the right. That gives you the basis for your circle. Now you should try to then, and this is where things are going to get messy really quickly, you should then try to, as best you can, draw a circle that connects all those, but then actually still looks like a circle. You're just kind of using these points as guides. Try to avoid drawing a rhombus. That is certainly the temptation, and mine looks kind of rhombus-like, but freehanding on this computer is a little bit tricky. The key thing is you identified where the center is correctly, as well as identified what the radius is. So, quick sum up, we've talked about circumference, area, what an exact versus an approximate answer are, as well as the rectangular coordinate formula for a circle. Thank you.